Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt, and this is Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit, your beacon of freedom and the American way of life. Tune in every Mondays for a new episode as we dive into the world of liberty and what makes our country great. Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Matt here with LLP, and we have a great show here for you today. We're going to be talking about some of the common misconceptions about firearms, and I tell you, we got one doozy of a show. We're going to go over everything from some myths and some misconceptions, some media, some things that the media get wrong about guns all the time. And I tell you, I'm looking forward to today's show, my man.
Absolutely. Today's going to be a great show. I think that the viewers, you guys are going to see a lot of these misconceptions and myths that you've also heard.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it always seems, Matt, like firearms are one of those things that it's the easiest thing, especially for the media. And the media is a huge culprit, right? They're one of the worst culprits there are, because they like to demonize firearms, and they do that through so many different methods. And we'll go over some of those. But before we get started on the show, how's the week been going for you?
Week has been amazing. You know, it's always a good week when you are able to wake up and both feet hit the ground at the same time, and you can put your pants on without any pain. You know, it's just it's a good week. You know, the bad weeks are when you get out of bed and your back hurts and your neck hurts and your arms hurt, and you know those days are more often than not. But it is what it is.
All right, I got a question for you.
Yep.
Okay, my girlfriend and I, we seem to have. I'm not going to say we argue or disagree, but we have perhaps maybe a slightly differing opinion on this subject matter, and that's chiropractors, okay? I went to a chiropractor yesterday, and before that, I'd gone the week before to go get adjusted. And I tell you, I feel better. So she thinks that it's kind of a pseudoscience. What do you think?
You know,
you believe in it?
I believe chiropractors have their place. If I'm in a really bad way, I do go and visit a sports chiropractor. The thing is that you have to understand is there's a difference between, say, like a sports chiropractor or someone that practices sports medicine and like your run-of-the-mill, you know, car crash chiropractor, which is more often than not what people run into. You go in and you say, "Hey, doc, I'm having some neck pain, some back pain," and they treat you like you were in a car accident. And then they just do the same thing, rinse and repeat over and over again. They're kind of adjusting you very generically, versus when you go in to see a sports chiropractor or someone that practices sports medicine, they are treating the actual issue. So if I say, hey, and especially, so for example, I visit a sports chiropractor that he does grappling. He's a grappler. So he understands the unique obstacles and pain that we have and that we get as grapplers. So if I say, hey, you know, my shoulder is really hurting me, I got caught in a Kimura, or I got caught in a you know, Americana, that's a shoulder lock. Like, he's like, all right, well, there's no reason for me to adjust your back. I'm going to work on your shoulder. And he'll spend the whole time just working on my shoulder, my rotator cuff, my scapula. So they really have to understand what your specialty is. Like, what are you going to see them for? Now, if I got into a car accident, I'm going to go see someone that specializes in car accidents.
Kind of generic.
Yeah, but you need to find someone that knows what they're doing. And unfortunately, Eric, you know, chiropractors do have kind of like that bad rap of like, oh, it was built around, you know, pseudoscience and magnets and all. Like, yeah, it is kind of a weird. Yeah. When you look back at the history of it, it is kind of weird.
You can see where a lot of physicians would consider it to be pseudoscience.
Yes.
So the guy that I went to, he's from South Africa.
Nice.
And it was just so interesting. You know, we kind of, you know, went down that rabbit hole, and it was just very interesting to hear some of his takes on things. And, you know, I feel like he's a very competent chiropractor, and, you know, the adjustments working well for me. He mentioned like nerve flossing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. And like with nerve flossing, what they do is they stretch your body in a certain location, like whether it's your head, like in my case, my shoulder is kind of out of whack a little bit. Mm-hmm. And he's been adjusting my shoulder, and it does help, like kind of breaking up that lactic acid and everything like that.
Yep.
But also the nerves, like as your muscles grow, as you're working out, you're getting stronger. Sometimes those muscles can pinch your nerves in certain ways from growing, just by virtue of growing. So with the flossing, it's like basically you like turn your head a certain way, and then, you know, you kind of raise and lower your hand like this, and you think it's the weirdest thing, but like just that bit will cause that nerve to, you know, sort of move and twitch in a way that allows it to, kind of, get unpinched.
Right.
And that can keep you from healing. It can keep your muscles from growing. And in some cases, you might have one side that's stronger than the other. In my case, my bench press is completely jacked up. One side is way weaker. So the strength is there, but if the strength isn't equal on both shoulders, then I'm never going to be able to complete the lift at the level that I need to complete it at.
Yeah. And you see that a lot, not just with, say, like bench press, but also like the way you walk, like your gait, the way that you walk would be abnormal. And that causes you to get even worse because now you're compensating. It's like the human body is so weird, man. It's like, if you have an abnormal gait, your body compensates for that abnormal gait. And then it makes it even worse, right? Yeah. And then like now you're kind of walking. Now you develop a limp. If you don't get it fixed, and then
the one thing it makes the other thing worse.
And now your shoulder, now because you have a limp and your body's compensating, your shoulders are like kind of jacked up, and then you go see the chiropractor, and like you could call it pseudoscience all you want, but they fix it. Like they fix the problem,
right?
So is it really pseudoscience? Like,
I think that the reason that it gets lopped into pseudoscience is because not everyone has the same type of result. Like everyone may experience different degrees of success with the treatment. Like one person may react really well to it, and the same could be said for acupuncture, right? Like, acupuncture, many people consider it to be pseudoscience, but acupuncture has been used in China for thousands of years. And hey, there's a reason they've been doing it for thousands of years. I mean, I'll trust a practitioner who's been doing that generationally for thousands of years over someone who is paid to, peddle some big pharma pill down your throat every month.
This is true.
Now, look, medical science is what it is. I'm not hating the pill pushers because, there are situations where, having that pill might help a certain person. I mean, in certain chemical imbalances or nutritional imbalances or something like that. But we're talking about using something to hide a symptom and not treat that symptom, but just have someone take a pill in perpetuity. I think that the reason it gets, lopped into pseudoscience is because people have varying degrees of success. One person may respond really well to chiropractic care. Others, maybe not so much, but maybe the underlying issue wasn't being caused by a chiropractic issue. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think that going to the chiropractor is cheap enough and affordable enough. I think it's something that should be considered maybe as a tool in the arsenal of multiple tools to get you better. I've been doing band work with resistance bands to help work that deltoid because it's really that delt back there that's just humming like crazy. And I've been trying to really get that stronger. How's the Jiu-Jitsu Academy doing? Better?
Jiu-Jitsu Academy is amazing.
Well, it's been doing good.
Yes. I mean, if you guys are interested in training with us, come train with us. Alliance Jiu-Jitsu Roswell, Georgia. And it's funny you bring up, the Jiu-Jitsu Academy because one of the things that is very unique about that is that it's like a very broad student base. So we have a ton of students, and this is with any Jiu-Jitsu Academy, really. You run into people from all walks of life, and more often you find your doctors and your chiropractors from your student base. So like guys, when I blew out my ankle and I had a catastrophic injury, the orthopedic surgeon was one of our jiu-jitsu members. So he didn't work on ankles. He works on like upper extremities, but he was able to make a phone call and said, "Hey man, go see my other buddy that is a foot and leg specialist." So like that network you build with your students is great. And then we have like chiropractors. We have that they come in, they set the table up like once a week, and they're like, "Hey, if you're having issues, just jump in. We'll work on it." So I agree with you 100%, especially with the chiropractor. It is something that you have to have done regularly. Like you said, inexpensive enough. $25 maybe once a week. You go in and then it'll keep you straight. Like your shoulders are even, your hips are even, your back is good. I think you see a lot of the issues when they do it once and then they're like, "Oh, it didn't work." We're like, "Bro, you did it once." It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you got to kind of keep it going.
Yes.
So we're going to get into today's show and talk about some gun misconceptions. That's good to hear that the Academy's doing well, Matt.
Oh, yes.
Before we get started, I do want to thank our friends at Choq. Our country just witnessed Donald Trump overcome political persecution, an assassination attempt, and the entire deep state to retake the presidency with a historic victory. There's one secret ingredient that allowed Trump to do this, and that's testosterone. What most people don't realize is that testosterone makes men willing and eager to take on challenges. Sadly, too many of us have lost our fight, and that's exactly how the globalists want it. They want us weak, out of shape, and full of estrogen and microplastics with low T. This is why we're excited to partner with Choq. Choq offers a whole lineup of products formulated to increase your energy, focus, detoxify your body, and clinically studied boost testosterone. Ingredients in the Choq male vitality stack have been clinically studied to boost free testosterone and 87% in just 21 days. Unlike with gimmicky vegetable pills or powder, you will feel the difference, and they have all the clinical studies to back it up. Right now, you can get 25% off of your Choq subscription for life. Just go to choq.com, spelled CHOQ. That's Charlie Hotel Oscar Quebec.com, and use the promo code LLP. That's Lima Papa. That's 25% off any subscription for life, and you can cancel anytime. Choq's made in America, and they have an all-American customer service team that's standing by to assist you. So definitely great group of people. I'm really excited. I hope that Choq, works well for you guys. So let me know if you try it. Let us know how you like it. Okay. And that's a perfect sponsor for this particular show.
Absolutely,
We've been kind of talking about working out and vitality and things. So
staying healthy.
Yep, staying healthy.
Very important.
That tends to be a little bit more important of a topic. It's like the older you get, the more you care about trying to, get older. Just to live longer.
It's true, man. You want to and it's so wild. I was just on the way over here, it's a little bit of a drive, and I'm in the car, I'm just thinking about when I was younger, I didn't really care too much about, living well into your 50s and 60s. And now that you're getting closer to that, you're like, all right, well, what do I need to do? I was like, I lift 3 times a week. On the drive over here, I was like, man, I should start lifting 5 days a week. I should try to train more so I can be better and be more healthy.
A lot of people, maybe you remember, maybe you don't know, but my powerlifting trainer passed away recently, James Pitbull. And, I've been taking on a few of his clients just to help them, realize some of their fitness goals and doing some training. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, especially 20 years ago, I mean, you knew me 20 years ago.
Yep.
If you would have asked that kid, if you thought, oh, one day are you going to be all, testosterone up and lifting weights and doing powerlifting and be a personal trainer, I would tell you, you're full of crap. But I kind of an act for it.
Scrawny Eric.
I'm not bad at it. Yeah, I was a scrawny little SOB, man. I was not a very big guy,
I sent you pictures. I found some old pictures when we were deployed, man. I was sending you pictures through text message. I was like, can you believe this?
I know. No wonder nobody could shoot me. I was so small. You have to be a really good marksman to hit somebody that tiny. That's the thing.
Smaller than a D28.
I know. Definitely tiny. But anyway, it's been going good, and I've been taking on a few clients here and there. If you are in the Middle Georgia area and you're interested in doing some personal training with me, I do have some very limited slots available. Let me know. I'm happy to train you. Long as time permits. I'm kind of running low on time for what I can devote to that, but I do have a few slots available. If somebody wants to train, let me know. All right, so common misconceptions about guns. I know this is probably what everybody's here for. And look, I want to make a quick mention here. I do put chapters down in the description box below, okay, that break down the show. So if you don't want to hear us banter, you can always skip straight to the subject matter. We always add that little exit option for you. So if you don't want to hear us jive for 15 minutes before we get into the subject matter, you're more than welcome to click through ahead on the chapters. We put that there for your convenience because I know not everybody wants to digest so much content, long form content. I get it. We only have so much time, but just want to let you know that option is there if you don't want to hear us banter for half the show or whatever. But we're going to talk about common misconceptions about guns, and I think there are so many that it's difficult sometimes to think, well, where the hell do we begin? I think one of the most obvious ones, and I think it's very pertinent right now to mention this misconception, is this sort of Hollywood misconception about suppressors. Right now we are on the cusp here of having some really good gun legislation going our way for the first time in a long time. I would say historical gun legislation going through. Now, I don't necessarily agree with everything that's in the big, beautiful bill.
Right.
Okay. However, we are getting some stuff snuck in there, essentially, that works for us. Right now, the Senate is pushing through the Short Act.
Yep.
So as of right now, from everything I can discern about it, is that suppressors, short-barreled rifles, short-barreled shotguns,
Yep.
and AOWs are all now going to be exempt from the tax, the NFA tax, and not be subject to registration at all. Now, it'll still be an over-the-counter item that will still go through a 4473, and you still have to do, a over-the-counter gun record on it. But at least you can theoretically get it that day and leave with it that day. And that's absolutely crazy. I mean, imagine how long it's going to be before suppressors and SBSs and SBRs are ever in stock again. Companies are going to be tripping over themselves to make these things for years to catch up with the demand.
Yep.
When someone finds out that they can buy a 12-inch shotgun, no special paperwork, and walk right out the door with it, that's a really amazing thing. So I wanted to take a moment to discuss policy real quick, because I think it does play into the misconceptions that Hollywood has about guns. Like, one primarily is suppressors. And what happens in the movie with a suppressor, Matt?
Oh Lord, it's everything is like deathly quiet, and like people are like, that reminds me of John. I hate to use John Wick as the example, but they just really went over the top when they were like walking through the train station, and they're just like, one guy's on the second floor and they're just like shooting at each other, and everybody's just walking by like none the wiser. I'm like, please.
There are very, very limited situations where a pistol could be that quiet.
And that's not one of them, because they were not.
And in public, I don't care how involved in the moment you are in terms of not paying attention, you're gonna know it's a gun. If you're within 20, 30 feet of it, you're still gonna know it's a gun. It's gonna have that, it has that sound to it. It has that snappy sound. You can hear the action. You can hear the slide reciprocating. Like, you may not know what the sound of a suppressed gunshot, especially like a 45 ACP or a 32 ACP with a good can, a pretty quiet setup. But you still know what the sound of a slide going, you know that sound. You know the sound of a hammer dropping, and you know that sound when you hear it, like a slide getting racked. Like, it has a distinctive sound. So you can make the gun as quiet as you want, but you're never going to get past the sound of that action. You're never going to get past the sound of what the gun actually does when guns are fired. And what's another misconception about suppressors in movies that drives people absolutely insane, I know, is that what kind of people use suppressors in movies?
Usually like assassins or hitmen.
Assassins.
Yeah.
Hitmen. Secret agents. Bad people, right? Or evil bad people who are, assassins or something. And I think that Hollywood paints that misconception about gun owners. It's not just the tool that's being used. It's the kind of person that uses the tool. Oh, well, for one, a suppressor is already a demonized item because, only assassins and secret agents and murderers and all of these hitmen are the only people that need a suppressor. And Hollywood paints that picture, that those are the only types of people who have and use suppressors. Now, is that to say that there haven't been, several people that the Mossad has probably knocked off with a suppressed Beretta 71? 22?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they've probably stepped into an elevator with a few people with a Beretta 71 with a can on it and took care of business, right? And I mean, look, governments kill people. It is what it is.
Yep.
Now, is that to say that that's not true, right? Is it not true that James Bond would have a suppressor on his gun or whatever? I mean, yeah, maybe. But the truth is, if you go to a range, like sometimes when we have range day, and then we have a suppressed only shooting hour that we have at range day, and you think, damn, that's not suppressed. You hear all of those sounds, where the gunshots are still breaking the sound barrier.
Oh yeah, man, it's still quite
You can
loud.
never really completely quiet down a gunshot.
Not any round that is worth its salt. I mean, when you start looking at like, you can suppress AKs, you can suppress like, ARs, you can suppress FALs, but they're still going to break the sound barrier. You're still going to hear the crack. And even if you use subsonic ammo, it's not reliable. You're not going to cycle a full auto with it. Everything's going to turn into a bolt action at that point. You're kind of cycling it manually. And I think you're right, Eric. I think the Hollywood and the movie industry for the longest time has really been the detriment to any type of movement on getting suppressors off of the NFA. Because like you said, everything is kind of, looked at like, oh, why do you need this? In the movies, only, bad people use them.
Right.
I don't talk highly of Europe on almost anything, but if you look at Europe with suppressors and rifles, they consider it rude if you don't use a suppressor. It's like, they're like, what do you mean you're shooting without a suppressor? Like, that's just rude, mate. It's like it's expected that you're going to use a can.
They treat suppressors like hearing protection.
Yeah.
And, even on days where they're out hunting, even a lot of hunters use suppressors over in Europe because they don't want to disturb people.
Now, don't take that as me agreeing with any of their, authoritarian laws, because I most certainly do not. But if you look at it just from that standpoint, I would agree with that. Like, it is rude to not use a can.
I also think that, in the situation of Europe, for instance, I don't know if I would ever I definitely would not want a model in the US where they say, okay, well, suppressors are illegal now, therefore every gun has to have a suppressor in order to try to keep the noise pollution down or something like that. Like, I wouldn't want it to be a requirement that someone had it on there, because for some, there's a lot of older or historic guns that cannot accept a suppressor. And I'm not going to, modify some antique firearm or older firearm to take a suppressor. So I don't think it should be a mandatory thing where someone should have to have a can on their gun. I just think it's good practice that, hey, if a gun is threaded and you can put a can on it and you have the means to own a suppressor, I don't really think it's a big deal. I find myself in my YouTube videos now, like, anytime a gun has a threaded barrel and I can throw a can on it, I do. Because, it's kinder to the neighbors. Not that my neighbors even care, but it is kinder to the neighbors, and it just makes the gun a little bit, less obnoxious. Yep. So when you're talking about suppressors on a center fire, supersonic rifle cartridge, like say you're trying to suppress 5.56, all it's really going to do is like what we call is take the edge off. Okay, it takes the edge off, and you're going to get some net sound reduction. Yeah, it's going to decrease the noise of the gun a bit for the shooter. And I would say militaristically or tactically or whatever you want to look at, that tactics-wise, will it conceal the location of a shooter a little bit better to have a suppressor? Yeah. On a big battlefield, when there's utter chaos going on and there's 500 men in a small area all shooting at each other, no one's going to know where you are. I mean, it's going to definitely, especially if there's other gunshots going on that are unsuppressed. Now, that's where suppressors change things a bit because, it can be super disorienting. Combat is already crazy and stressful and chaotic, especially when you look at the type of combat that's happening in Ukraine right now, okay? And those guys are, they're hemming each other up big time, and a lot of those guys are not using suppressors. Some of them are. So if there's some sustained firefight between a few hundred guys on either side and they're, I don't know, guarding a road or they're doing whatever they're doing, whatever objective of each other's that they're trying to take and or defend or both, right? If some gunfire breaks out, especially with a Dishka or some sort of a RPK or RPD or some machine gun, you can absolutely mask the location and sound of the shooter, especially when they're laying in the prone with a suppressor. That's when someone with a suppressor is going to absolutely have a leg up on everything going on around them when there's chaos going on. There are documented situations in like the battle for Stalingrad and everything. Like you look at World War II. I mean, there were situations where bombs are falling all over the place. And do those snipers have suppressors? No, they don't. Now, there were some limited suppressor use, but generally speaking, most of them did not. And Russia had a bunch of snipers in the war. They trained snipers, like to them, it was like they had this sort of mass-produced sniper mentality for them. So they had a mass-produced sniper rifle with a mass-produced optic, and they made as many of those as they could and put those in the hands of a lot of people who showed a decent amount of shooting skill prowess. And when a bomb would drop and you hear that huge explosion, you're not going to hear a rifle shot over that bomb. Mm-hmm. But you'd have to have your composure in that moment to think, okay, a bomb's dropping, kaboom, pow. And there's a lot of that going on. Like when artillery shell would hit, a sniper would fire.
Yep.
To cover the sound of the report of the rifle. which is a really smart tactic.
And that's, I mean, America pretty much mimicked that with the designated marksman program. They just took the guys that, were, better shots, maybe that qualify 40 out of 40, you're not quite, they don't have any sniper school slots. So they're like, hey man, let's just send you to DMR school, or here's a DMR. Let's do you go to a little DMR camp, and they put that little accurized rifle in the hands of someone that's a little bit more capable, smarter than the average bear per se, and then let them have it. So that's how you see guys running around with DMRs, because, they were just a little bit better. They're able to utilize that accurized rifle a little bit more.
If a guy is qualifying on his rifle in the military, and I don't know, you're qualifying on an M4, right? 14.5-inch barrel M4, and you're making shots out to, I think now it's 500, isn't it? They shoot out to, or the Marines still do?
Marines shoot at 500. They were the ones that shoot to 500 all the time. Army's always shot to 300.
Right.
But it's not the same as it used to be. We qualify with iron sights.
They're using
these guys now are using like CCOs, like ACOGs. Come on, man, you can hit anything at 300 meters with an ACOG. Freaking yeah.
Well, to compare, like 20 years ago, when he and I were involved in military stuff, if you could qualify iron sights with an M4 and shoot 40 out of 40, and you take that same soldier and give him a 20-inch M16 A4 with an ACOG on it. Oh my God! They absolutely slay with that thing.
That's a wrap, man.
It totally can shoot out to 500 or 600 without even thinking about it. And with just a little bit of basic training, you've got someone who, they may not be a sniper, but dang if they're not capable enough to defend you at a little bit more standoff range that a rifleman would typically be shooting, which is great. And I guess that is another common misconception when we look at Hollywood specifically, and even this goes into the media as well, where every time, all right, how many times on the news have you seen some bolt action hunting rifle show up in a crime scene or something, and they say, oh, it's a sniper rifle. Just because a bolt action gun has a scope on it. Oh, it's not a hunting rifle, it's a sniper rifle. They always want to make it out that every person who owns a gun like that is some sort of sniper or has some ill intent. And again, it's about sort of misrepresenting what the intention of the tool is, and the intention, and assuming the intention of the user who has it.
Right.
Because, oh no, a hunter is harmless, but a sniper, oh no, snipers don't kill animals, they shoot people. And the media, they always love, anytime there's a bolt action hunting rifle, they always say sniper rifle. It's just a misconception.
But the media doesn't even realize that snipers are hunters. They were hunting snipes. That's where it came from. They were literally Scottish hunters that went out and hunted snipes, elusive birds. So by calling them snipers, they are in fact calling them hunters.
Right.
But
just a different kind of prey.
Exactly. The two-legged game.
Well, yeah. And so there's all those sort of misconceptions like that. And I'll tell you, the media is really the worst one. I mean, how many times in the media have you seen where they'll cut a video from YouTube or something that'll show a shotgun slug hitting a watermelon, and of course, it just completely evaporates this freaking watermelon, right? But they don't show when the camera zooms out and it's a shotgun. They just cut it there and go, look at the destructive damage of the AR-15. But now, don't get me wrong, an AR will still do a number on a watermelon. Don't get me wrong. But it doesn't look like a 12-gauge shotgun slug hitting it. So it's like they always want to blow out of proportion the power of certain guns just to demonize a certain type of firearm that their handlers, don't want them to be okay with. And they want to change a public opinion about those types of guns. That's the thing. It's all in an effort to change public opinion.
And that's the craziest thing
when people.
That's the craziest thing when you see those videos, Eric, and they're like, "Oh, this is what happens," and you're like, "That 5.56 or that 2.23 isn't going to do that much damage to a watermelon. You're going to see like a hole, and then the backside might be blown out, but it's not going to explode." It's just crazy to hear that. They think this weapon does so much damage, and in fact, it doesn't. So I wanted to back up real quick. Talking about, the short act, it's going to be a glorious day when you can walk into a gun store and pick up a Fostech Origin, AOW with a salvo suppressor at the same time and walk out and just have this freaking crazy compact, Hellraiser. Because I mean, could you imagine someone kicking in your door and you got a Fostech Origin with a drum mag and a salvo? Yeah. Oh my God.
So some interesting things about the AOWs that we'll just kind of talk about briefly before we get into some of these other like myths and misconceptions. So AOWs, they have a weight requirement. That's part of it. Like you guys, some of you may not remember or know about it, but like when the Korean company Daewoo, they were bringing in a bunch of really cool guns like the K2 and also the civilian version, which is called the DR200. And they're great. Look, the K2 is a great service rifle, and I would pit it against an AR any day, right? They're great. And but they also had a shotgun that they brought in as well. So the Daewoo shotgun was a South Korean shotgun with this like crazy drum magazine.
Bipod.
Bipod. Like it was the coolest thing, but they wound up changing some of the laws around, and they couldn't bring those Daewoo shotguns anymore because they weighed a certain amount. So they ended up determining that any gun that weighs over a certain amount is now an AOW or destructive device or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they did that on purpose. At the time, this law was purposely, authored in the way that it was, or at least, their view of it was changed in the way that it was in order to prevent certain types of guns from finding their way over to America, like the Daewoos, and I think the Street Sweeper was another gun that they tried to outlaw the Street Sweeper because it was so heavy.
Yeah.
And the whole idea is that because it's heavy, I guess it cuts down on recoil. But in their mind, it's heavy because it holds a lot of shots. Mm-hmm. As a drum magazine or something like that. So you'd mentioned the Origin. Okay.
Yep.
I know David personally. He's a really good guy. And I know the whole team over at Fostech. And they're really great people. I've been up to their factory in Indiana. I think they're Seymour, Indiana. Really great group of people and really, really awesome folks. And they really love what they do. But they were running into a lot of challenges getting the Origin to be a gun that they could actually sell just as a shotgun to the public and it not fall into that destructive device category. Or was it the AOW? Either AOW or destructive device category. The reason that they were having so much trouble is they had to put a lot of thought into lightening that gun up to get it light enough to not be considered in that category to make it an NFA item. And that includes, like, they had to skeletonize the drum magazines. They had to, skeletonize as many parts as they could. They had to put lightning cuts. They had to, use polymer furniture and polymer, parts in some locations to cut down on the weight. So now that all of this crap is out of the way, if the Short Act goes through, I would imagine that David will probably make some changes to the Origin and beef up a few things. Oh, yeah. Right? It might be a little heavier, but it also might be a little more rugged as well. Yeah. A little more bomb proof.
I mean, the gun looks sick, man. I mean, because they had to do so many lightning cuts and because they had to skeletonize it, the thing that gave you like that Space Marine bolter look. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh man, that thing is nasty.
It does kind of have that look.
It does. It's like it's very like rectangular, square, like.
It has that look.
I think it's beautiful.
It has that look.
But it is heavy, not going to lie. Like you got to be a man to tote that thing around.
Yeah. I do like the Origin, and it's a fantastic shotgun. And I do like shotguns in general. I think for me, I've always really liked auto-loading shotguns because just the amount of payload that you can deliver on target, they are fantastic in that role.
Especially that specific shotgun. I mean, that thing will just put freaking a drum of double-aught buck on somebody in like 4 seconds you can unload an entire drum. I was like, oh
yeah. So there are so many myths and misconceptions, and I know we've touched on some of the ones that the media is just so bad about trying to create this Chicken Little complex about everything gun related, right? Whether it's misrepresenting what type of damage a gun does, misrepresenting the use of suppressors, demonizing black rifles such as AKs and ARs. There seems to be an agenda with the media in trying to paint a very negative light around these types of items. And those are all very common misconceptions that unfortunately the public really falls for that a lot. And, politics are downstream from culture. And culture is downstream from perception. And when perceptions are changed in such a way, obviously our media has a lot to do with that because people listen to the media, unfortunately. Now, in recent years, I think the media has been under a lot more scrutiny than what they have in the past. And they have a lot more difficult burden of proof to prove some of the things they say, but it doesn't mean that there aren't people who, they eat up whatever narrative that they can have. Okay. But Hollywood is in the same boat. And I know you've seen many movies where, firearms are misrepresented. And of course, it changes people's perception on them. We talked about how, secret agents in movies and snipers in movies. And there's a lot of really funny things that you see in some sniper movies too, like scopes mounted backwards and, absolutely Looney Tunes crap that like no sniper would use a rifle like that or a rig like that. But you can tell for the production, they were kind of short on money and they have to just get whatever cheap gun they can. In fact, there was one movie with, oh my God, I can't remember the guy's name. It was one of those 80s, kind of action stars, but he had an air gun. It was like like you could totally tell it was just like an air rifle with like a little cheesy scope on it. And like that's his gun. He was the sniper in that movie, and I mean, they got away with that because it's like sometimes the facts are secondary to the entertainment. Yep. So that's another reason there are so many misconceptions, primarily from Hollywood. They get sounds wrong. I'm sure you've seen so many situations where they don't change magazines and it's like it's a never ending mag. Boom, 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 boom. You never see them reload.
Yep. Like Commando.
Right. Like Commando. It's like, for one, where are those mags on him?
Yep.
Where's he carrying them?
He's wearing no shirt. He's got one magazine in the gun.
Where are the reloads?
Yep.
So it paints a misconception. Hollywood paints a misconception that guns can shoot forever and have unlimited ammo. And of course, what do you see the people doing in these movies? In Commando, what does he do? He proceeds to just lay waste to everyone he sees. Yep. So people have this misconception that, when a person's got a gun, they're going to be on a bloodbath, a blood spree, a killing spree. So those misconceptions are, on the fault of Hollywood as well. And unfortunately, culture is downstream from those perceptions. And ultimately, so are the political things that we have to deal with, such as laws and, what type of appetite people actually have for gun control as we know it is directly dependent and at fault of Hollywood and the media.
This is true. I mean, that media plays its part. The general public plays its part as well because they as much as us as consumers, as movie consumers, enjoy watching the movie for entertainment. We also are susceptible to not speaking out and not standing up for what's going on because we want entertainment. Like, oh yeah, The Matrix, great movie. Like it was very entertaining. Was it Hollywood accurate? Maybe the lobby scene. That was fairly, accurate on round count because you would actually see him throw the guns away. So he has the OG 1 Scorpions, which I thought was kind of cool. So like the original Scorpions, he runs out those 30 rounds real quick, throws them, pulls out the MP5Ks, runs those out real quick. He doesn't even change magazines. He just throws them, goes and grabs 2 more. I was like, okay, we're kind of accurate here on round count. But that's about it.
That's what we call a New York reload.
Yes, the New York reload.
That's a New York reload.
Throw it away, grab another one.
Yep.
So we got to the media misconceptions and myths. From a personal, this is one that's always bugged me. I'm going to bring up one that's always bugged me, and I do my best to tell people this because there's 2 camps. There's the people that they're like, oh, I want to carry a revolver. Like, okay, there's nothing wrong with carrying a revolver. Revolvers are cool. They'll get the job done. But then you ask them why. Like, why do you want to carry a revolver? And they say, because they're more reliable. They never fail. And I'm like, I don't know if that's entirely true because they do fail. But when they do fail, it's catastrophic. Like there's no coming back from it. It's not like you can't just slap, tap, and rack a revolver and get it back into action. It's like when you pull the trigger, nothing happens on a revolver, you're toast.
Yes. Nothing's probably going to happen no matter what you do.
Yep.
I will say this. I do believe in that. I believe that, people do sometimes place a little bit too much faith in a revolver being completely bomb-proof. Mm-hmm. Now, guys, look, don't get me wrong. Revolvers are tremendously reliable, and I can count the issues that I've had on a revolver I mean, maybe one time that I had a bad hand load that wasn't crimped all the way and the bullet offset back in the cylinder and locked the cylinder up.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a hand loading issue, not the issue with the gun. So, okay, yeah. Can the crimp come undone and the bullets have a bit of offset and prevent the cylinder from rotating? Yes. Can you have a squib and get a stuck round in the barrel? Well, you can do that with a 9mm autoloader, can't you?
Yes.
So the same thing, it could deadline your autoloader, can also deadline your revolver. So that's not uniquely special to revolvers. So we can't really say that. What is the one, maybe a few specific issues that a revolver only can have that an autoloader can't? Can an autoloader break a firing pin or snap a spring of some sort that could cause it not to run properly or bust a striker? Of course it can. Anything can break. Anything that's man-made can and will break, and it can. So that's not unique to just a revolver. What are revolver-specific issues that only a revolver would experience to stop it up over an autoloader that would not apply to an autoloader? Well, one would be the offset of the projectile, keeping the cylinder from rotating. What happens when a projectile is offset in an autoloader? Well, it really can't, because through the firing sequence of an autoloader, let's say that a round chamber's in your 9mm and the bullet is a little loose in the case and it goes forward a little bit. As long as it's still sticking in the mouth of the case enough to build pressure when you fire the gun, it's just going to shoot like you didn't even know anything happened. Now, okay, the gun might short stroke, it might have less velocity, but that bullet probably, unless it didn't just fall apart in the chamber when the gun loaded itself, the bullet's going to leave the barrel and the gun will probably cycle on its own, right? Okay. Yep. So autoloaders have a way of self-correcting in a way that revolver cannot do. So that revolver has a unique stoppage that can only happen to a revolver that can't happen in an autoloader. And if it does happen in an autoloader, it's easily correctable by just tap, rack, observe, and continue shooting. All right. What is another specific stoppage that only a revolver can have that an autoloader can't? Well, one is the lock on the cylinder. All right. There's like a little bitty hand that pops up that holds that cylinder in time and holds it steady while the gun's being fired. That lock can break. Now the gun's deadlined, right? What happens when you take a revolver, you open the cylinder and you go, and you spin it and then go, bam, and close it. And then all that mass stops against that bolt. What if it breaks? What if it's compromised? What if it has some sort of a burr that you don't really know about? So yes, revolvers are very reliable, but they are not without their potential faults. And I would say some faults that might only be unique to them that don't even affect an autoloader.
Yep.
I would say autoloaders are very reliable. And in a situation where an autoloader does not work, it could potentially be the same situation that would deadline a wheel gun anyway.
True.
So I don't really buy it when someone says, well, I want a revolver because it's more reliable. I don't know if you're necessarily choosing a revolver because of its reliability, or if you're choosing a revolver because it's light and handy and compact and concealable. I would say a J-frame Smith is great for that. If my argument between revolver and pistol was that that reliability was an issue, well, I don't think that's a good enough example. I would argue that a J-frame hides on the body quite well.
Because it's got no hammer as well.
Yeah,
like
everything's nice and compact. There's nothing that can snag on your clothing. There's no external hammer. So the argument of wheel gun versus autoloader, that's a very, hotly debated topic between people. But I think once you see what actually, deadlines a wheel gun and a autoloader versus what doesn't, I think you quickly begin to see that it's probably more semantics than it is anything else.
And I think a lot of people, they base their purchase off of the myths that we're talking about. So this person might go in and say, hey, I heard, a revolver is more, reliable. So I'm going to purchase a revolver. And like you said, it might not necessarily be the case. I would even argue that I would feel more if you took two guns, one was a revolver, one was an autoloader, and you took them about 25 feet in the air and you just dropped them on the ground, I personally would feel more confident that the autoloader you could pick that up and fire it over the revolver. I'm certain something on that revolver broke. Like inside, whether it's knocked out of time, whether, the lock on it broke. That's just me personally. I would feel much more comfortable like saying, I'm going to grab this, semi-auto autoloader and it's going to do the job.
What if you drop a SIG P320?
Different story.
Yeah,
Different story.
I've got one. Look, we can just throw it right here on the floor right
now.
No. Oh, you're so confident, Matt. You're so confident.
Not anything but that.
So quickly, well, all right. Is the reliability of the SIG M17, the SIG P365, all right, is that something that's blown out of proportion? Just because let's say a few soldiers and officers dropped their pistol and it discharged. Well, it's obviously an issue. SIG, I don't want to say that they've been forthcoming or not forthcoming about the issue. Quite frankly, I haven't really looked into it, so I don't know how they're handling it, but I would say that knowing a company like SIG, I would be willing to bet they're probably just making rolling changes.
That's
exactly
like
if they identified, they identified the potential problem that could cause it to do that, right?
Yep.
And do you think for 1 second they're going to come out and go, well, this gun within the serial number range can do X, Y, Z? They may have done that, but it seems to me that what most companies would likely do is go over to the engineering department and go, hey, Bobby, come over here for a second. Change this right now and don't tell anybody. They're going to fix the issue, but I think they're going to kind of be quiet about it. So remember early on when the SIG P365 came out, Matt actually helped me film. He did some shooting as well when we did sort of a little 1,000-round torture test just to see if we could get the SIG P365 to stop in some way, whether, it be from some potential issues or primer drag. At one point, there was a little bit of primer swipe that was occurring on some of the P365s, and it seemed to give people the idea that possibly it could cause some stoppages. And I know Tim at Military Arms Channel tested it. We tested it. You and I shot 1,000 rounds. I think the only issues that we have were just the grip, maybe causing the slide not to go all the way. That was just a manual of arms issue. But in terms of the gun itself actually choking, I didn't really feel like we could produce any stoppages that were related to that particular issue.
No, you're correct. That was just, self-induced. If it was a stoppage, it was a self-induced stoppage.
Right. And it happens.
Yep.
It happens.
But I mean, I think that SIG, I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't own any SIGs. I don't carry SIG. So for me, I don't stay on top of it, like most people do that are kind of invested in that ecosystem of SIGs. What I can tell you is I've seen reports that they changed their manual of arms. So basically they said you're not supposed to carry in condition 1. So they're saying, hey, these guns are not designed to carry in condition 1, carry condition 0. And for you guys, it's one in the chamber, one not in the chamber. Yeah. So they're directing people that own these 320s to carry in condition 0 so that these accidental discharges aren't happening. So I guess in their opinion, if you just take the round out of the chamber, there's nothing to go off.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. All right. This is my M17. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some primed brass. All right. No powder, no projectile. I'll make a separate YouTube video and I'm going to attempt to induce some unintended primer hits.
Okay.
Now, with maybe some specific taps from a hammer in a few locations. I don't know if I'm going to go throw my pistol around because this is one of my carry guns. I don't want to screw it up too much. But I guess if I mess it up, I can call Wilson Combat and get a new grip module. This is their aftermarket grip module that they make for the M17. And I like it a lot. It's got some good texture. And this is not necessarily a plug for them, but heck, I guess it can be. Look, it's great. So Wilson Combat does make this grip module. And one of the neat things about the SIG M17, M18, 320 series of pistols is that this serial number component is actually just this internal chassis. It's like a trigger group assembly, and that is a serial number component. So I can change out slides and barrels and grips and all sorts of goodies on this thing. And the serial number location is just a grip module, the fire control module. I think
you
is what they call it. You can
change the frame to a bigger frame, to a smaller frame.
In light of that, I mean, okay, so have some of the M17s and some of the P320s had some issues? I'm not going to say those issues aren't valid or that they didn't happen. Of course they happened. They were, acknowledged issues. But I love my M17. This gun shoots fantastic. It's a really great gun. And, you know, I can't say that I've ever had an issue out of it. But, hey, I will do a video and try to induce a problem out of this gun. There you go, Kermit. Give Kermit his pistol back.
And the capybara.
Yeah, and the capybara. So when we're getting on to more of the misconceptions that individuals have, right? We kind of talked about the media. We talked about Hollywood. And now this is just like people's general stupidity, right? Mm-hmm. And some of these areas are certainly, you know, points that are worth considering, because if a story doesn't start from just anywhere, right? A story has to start from somewhere. If a rumor mill gets floating around about a gun that has a specific type of problem or issue or quirk or tendency, it has to have some kernel of truth. It had to happen to somebody, right? This one's related to hunting, and this goes back to my grandpa. And a lot of people that I know also would clean their guns with WD-40 all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. What happens? Someone cleans their gun with WD-40. They spray the action and barrel and all sort of crap down. And what do? They put it, when someone puts a gun in the closet, they're going to put butt stock down, muzzle up, and just going to lay it in the closet, right?
Correct.
What happens to all that oil?
Goes back into the action. Right.
It drips back and it works its way down. It doesn't stay where you put it. It works its way down. And then what happens once it hits the wood?
Okay.
It soaks the wood.
Yep.
Oil soaking the wood. All right. Now imagine doing that over a 10-year period. What's going to happen to that stock? Probably going to have some structural integrity that's compromised over time, right? You're going to have some damage, oil soak, right?
I could see that.
Those Remington 7400s and 7600s, they got in the 760s and 740s, they got a really bad rap, right? Remington had such a problem with that rifle, not because that the gun wasn't good, but because people wouldn't care for the gun properly. So again, that's one of those misconceptions that got thrown around. Oh, those 748 Woodsmasters are such garbage 30-06s. You know, so it was an auto-loading 30-06 with a 5-round magazine. So just a basic hunting rifle, but it was a semi-auto. And those guns began to get a horrible rap. They made them in 270. They made them in 30-06. And I think they might have had some they did in 308 for a while, but most of them were chambered in 30-06. And they'd had some revisions and tried to change the gun around a little bit and improve it, but it just wound up not being successful. So it's one of those examples where it's not because the gun wasn't a decent gun. When they're sprung well and cared for properly and lubricated properly, and you take care of them and feed them good ammo, they work just fine. But people would just be lazy in the care of the gun, and then the gun took the rap for the lack of maintenance and care that someone just wasn't willing. Is a little bit complicated of a gun to take apart and field strip and clean. So what would people do? They would lock the bolt to the rear and spray a whole can of oil in there and shake it out. All right, we're good to go. Laziness.
When you asked that about the wood furniture getting damaged, I was thinking, I'm like, I don't agree with that, because I think that if you maintain your weapon and you're doing it regularly, you would catch that. It's the guys that like leave it in there for years and like never touch it,
right,
is causing that issue.
Oh well, and then with WD-40, what happens is if you spray a lot of WD-40, eventually what will happen is it I don't want to say that it like evaporates off. It doesn't, but it doesn't quite stay put in the way that people think it does. It will varnish after a while. It will leave like a kind of sticky varnish behind if it's left on there for a long time. Like you spray WD-40 on a part and then just leave it for a year and you don't ever mess with it again. It's almost like that oil sort of congeals into like almost like a faux cosmoline.
Yeah, I believe
now imagine how good that gun's going to work when you pull it out. Probably not, right? Like, okay, well, the answer is more WD-40. Just keep spraying it down. And then that's the issue.
Rinse and repeat.
The way that the bolt on that rifle locks up, it uses this kind of weird, fine, interrupted thread that's like, it's not a buttress thread, but it's like the way that bolt locks up, it has a very specific type of lock mechanism for the bolt that requires very little rotational axis, but it has a lot of areas of contact over the entire surface of the bolt that as it locks up, it has to lock into these tiny little grooves very precisely. It's a precise lockup. But they are able to make the throw of the bolt much shorter. Okay. So if you get a little rust or crud or gunk on those on those threads, the gun ain't going to run right. So the gun ended up getting a bad reputation, not because it wasn't a good gun, but because people didn't care for it properly. So that's one of those examples. And the same thing, really those Ruger Deerfield carbines, the 44 mag semi-auto carbines, same thing. Those guns got a bad reputation for being unreliable and being, jam-o-matics, simply because people did not understand the proper protocols for maintenance. Another good example of a gun that fell into that type of issue is the Remington 1100. The Remington 1100 shotgun, people hate them to this day. Like, they have a very specific protocol for maintenance that no one ever does properly.
I believe it.
So they get a reputation for not being good. But it's not because it's not a good shotgun. It's because you don't care for it properly. 90% of issues you have out of a Remington 1100 are related to failure in the maintenance protocol. Nothing more.
Well, think about, all the other firearms that they have to dumb down because people don't want to either do maintenance or they don't want to go through a certain sequence to do stuff like, ARs. Like 90% of them are overgassed because people, they know they're not going to go through and select the right ammo. They're going to I'm just going to throw in this wolf. I'm just going to do whatever I need to do. And so they have to overgas it so it's reliable. So then they complain, I'm getting gas. I'm like, all this gas is getting thrown back in my face. It's like throwing, ammo everywhere. It's like unreliable. It's like same thing. They've learned early on, they can't do, nice. You can't give people nice things. You have to give them to the masses. It's like you can't give somebody a nice smooth action. What was it, like the Mauser glass actions, and like you can't do that anymore. Like people don't appreciate it. They're like, they just want what works.
Yeah, the sort of like industrial reliability that is, kind of made rough on purpose so that it can't really fail, like past the point of failure. In fact, I'm looking at a rifle over your shoulder right now, the Ruger American. I like the Ruger American series of rifles. They're great. Okay. But in that same vein, is it a nice M77 Mark II like your Alt-6? No. They're much more crude. Now they are cheaper. They cost less than half the money of what one of those M77s costs. Yep. Ruger still makes the M77 today, but it's called the Hawkeye. They changed the name of it. That's not because the old M77 Mark II all-weathers were not good guns. They're, in fact, some of the best guns that Ruger ever made. And I recently went through and I got rid of some of mine. I had a large collection of them, and I've sold several of them, but I only kept one in my collection. And I kept my 9.3 by 62. It's right over there, actually, to your side, right there with the green sling on it. I love that gun. It's an absolute jackhammer. And but the point is, I suppose, that the Ruger American is kind of like that, like you mentioned, where it's kind of crude and basic, but it's functional.
Yeah, it'll work.
Does the job. Does the job. Polymer stock, a little bit more simple bolt mechanism. I think it has like a basic pin-in barrel, kind of almost like a Savage style barrel system. Makes it real easy to manufacture. Mm-hmm. It's just a more affordable rifle. There's nothing wrong with a rifle being affordable. But anyway, you're completely right on that. There are so many freaking myths and misconceptions that we could go over. I mean, this video could take hours of going through every little story and thing that we heard over the years. I mean, everything from people throwing ammunition in fires, like what ammo does when you throw it in a fire, right? There's a lot of myths and misconceptions about what happens when you throw ammo in a fire. What happens?
I've never.
Has anyone ever thrown?
I've never done it. I've never been dumb enough to do it. I mean, that's like that's.
All right. I know some of y'all had some crazy uncle who accidentally, y'all were out shooting and you had a big bonfire going or something at the camp, and he accidentally threw a box of 22 ammo in the fire, thinking it was empty, and there might have been a couple little handful left that he didn't realize was in there. Okay. Well, what happens to those things? Yeah, they're going to go off. That powder's going to ignite. Okay, they're going to go off. What part of a bullet? All right, when a piece of ammunition is in a fire, what's the projectile? Is it the projectile?
Well, I'm Now that you're walking us through this, I understand where this is going.
What hurts you?
Well, are we talking the projectile in the chamber, or are we talking projectile in the fire?
I'm talking you take ammo and you throw it in a fire. That ammo's going to go off. What's going to hurt you?
The casing, probably.
What's going to come flying out of the fire and hurt you?
Probably the casing.
The casing.
Yeah. Because
it's simple physics.
Yeah. I just realized
the projectile weighs more than the brass. All right. That is not a contained situation where the pressure is being contained by a chamber that then pushes the bullet, the heavier object, through the barrel with the expanding gases. No, the bullet stays relatively put. It's the weirdest thing. If you were to film a burning bullet going off, the projectile is not going to really go too far. The case becomes the projectile.
Yep, I believe
so you have like pieces of brass shooting out of the fire at some pretty good speeds now. Now, is it fast enough to kill you? Maybe not, but it could leave a mark. It could hurt. I mean, a 22, maybe not so much, but you better believe a 50 cal or some 9mm or 5.56, that brass is coming out, out of there.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
Anything where the projectile weighs more than the brass, that brass is coming out of the fire. And don't ask me how I know. I mean, I've had some unintended situations where that's happened before. So many things like that. I could tell so many stories about some of the goofy, dumb, harebrained things that have happened at deer camp over the years. And alcohol was not involved, I promise. Okay, I'm not suggesting that we would get drunk and do dumb things or whatever. But I will say that some of the stories you hear about deer camp from people related to guns probably had a little bit of lubrication involved. Okay,
yep.
So, some alcohol was probably involved. In order for people to, things like barrel obstructions. I could tell so many stories. So let us know down in the comment section below, what are some of the craziest misconceptions and myths or just crazy stories that you've heard about guns over the years? What happened to somebody you know? Did they have a weird barrel obstruction? Did something wild happen? And it's like so outrageous you can't believe it's true.
And I know we didn't even scratch the surface on all of the myths. This is just what we had time for. Guys,
right.
I'm positive we will work around again, and we're going to have a lot of different other stuff like myths and, stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah.
But
let us know in the comment section down below. What's the craziest thing that you've ever heard about guns, whether it's a myth or a misconception or just a crazy story? Let me know. And if we get a large enough collection of these stories and things, maybe we'll compile an episode and we'll read some of your stories and react to them. How about that?
That's right.
That'd be fun.
That's a good idea.
We have so much more on the way. I know today's show, we kind of bounce all over the place, but I wanted to go over, I think really the worst culprit is that sort of complex of the media and Hollywood and the way they misrepresent gun owners. And especially they do it in such a conniving and evil way to purposely paint a bad picture against gun owners and to move the political narrative of guns. I think that's really the most egregious thing that's being done, and it's less effective now than it was years ago.
I would agree with that.
But it's certainly something that I think people need to be aware of, that they're always going to try to make gun owners look bad. They're going to make guns look bad. They're going to demonize the idea of owning a gun. And I think that's really what I wanted to portray in today's show for sure.
No, I think you mission accomplished, man.
You got anything else for him today?
No, man. I think it was a great conversation. We hit on at least 2 or 3 of the myths, that at least the biggest one that bothered me. And obviously with the short act coming up, like that was definitely something that we needed to discuss, just because it kind of scratched 2 itches. It was like, hey, we need to talk about that. But we also need to talk about, why, like the why behind the why.
Yeah. I agree. There's always a why behind the why.
That's right.
And believe me, they're not going to stop. They're always going to go out of their way. And I say the anti-gunners and the media and Hollywood, they're always going to go out of their way to try to make gun owners look crazy. And unfortunately, their media and their entertainment and all the things that they put forth is an effective tool for them to change the narrative on it. So just be mindful of that. Guys, we have many more podcasts on the way. Lots of cool stuff that we're doing. I've got a whole list here. I'm telling you, some of these are some juicy podcast episodes.
Some spicy stuff.
Some of them are spicy. I appreciate you so much for tuning in. You guys have yourselves a wonderful week, and we'll see you next Monday. Remember, we post every Monday at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here on Iraq Veteran 8888. Also, we post everywhere all of your podcasts can be found, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Yeah, all of the audio directories. But guys, if you watch it on YouTube, you will get to see a little bit more. You'll get to see some of the pictures that that Lisa does. She'll put up the pictures when Eric's talking about previous videos. The links up for those videos will be in the description. The chapter markers are accurate, but you get a little bit more of the contextualization detail from what we're talking about. So if we reference a picture, you'll see the picture.
Right on.
So, yep.
Guys, have yourselves a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Life, Liberty, and Pursuit. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate that. You can support us over on Ballistic Ink by picking yourself up some merch. And remember, guys, danger is freedom. Have a good one.